were these bills read by any other of our representatives. Shame on our own Kit Bond. He had the good sense not to vote for either of these bills, but after 22 plus years in the Senate, under various administrations, he had plenty of time to raise the cry about wasteful spending. It wasn't just one party that got us into this mess. Shame on our congressional leaders and senior statesmen. Leaders like Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid, Barney Frank and Ted Kennedy. Shame on them for saddling our nation with an uncountable burden of debt. Likewise, our other fine congressmen and women, too numerous to name. However, we know who you are, and we will remember your name in November of 2010. We have term limits. It's called a ballot, and we will exercise those limits at the next election. This financial crisis that grips our country and our state could have been averted by a Congress that was paying attention to the job it was elected to do, instead of lining their own pockets and collecting campaign contributions from the very companies they were supposed to be regulating. This crisis could have been Congress's finest hour. Instead, it was their defining moment of greed, partisanship, and corruption. This shameless act of disregard has saddled us with a debt burden that our children and grandchildren will have to shoulder until it can no longer be borne. Finally, our country's place as the leader of economic growth could collapse. Our currency could become worthless. As I said earlier, everyone likes to blame the government. However, we the people have to accept our share of the blame as well. It was we the people that used our homes like a savings account or ATM to buy boats and vacations. It was we the people that borrowed money because it was so easy to get. It was we the people that bought a home we couldn't afford in the mistaken belief that it would always increase in value. Amen. It was we the people that bought foreign-made products because they were a little cheaper. And it was we the people that seduced ourselves into believing that tomorrow didn't matter. It was we the people that re-elected these same politicians time after time, expecting different results. Amen. Because of the foresight of our founding fathers, we have the right to peacefully assemble here in this lovely spot on the Missouri River. And we have the right to let our elected officials know of our displeasure and their breach of trust. Because of our Constitution, we do not have to pick up our pitchforks and squirrel guns and stage a revolution in the manner of our forefathers. We have the opportunity to stage a revolution in the privacy of a voting booth. That's right. We have the opportunity to remake our country into a vision of hope and prosperity without firing a shot. Our time may be short to preserve our way of life, but we have the tools at our disposal. Amen. We can vote for real change in 2010. Get rid of those pandering, self-serving representatives that have held their positions for way too long and replace them with real citizens that truly have the needs of their country first. People that understand the value of a dollar. People that have worked, run a business, balanced their own budget, and yes, paid their taxes. The day of the professional politician is over. They have finally awoken that sleeping giant called the silent majority. We are becoming subjects, not citizens, in our own country. It's time for some common sense in government. Far too many of our longtime representatives have become part of the problem, not the solution. It's time for the silent majority, the hardworking, tax-paying, job-creating, God-fearing Americans to stand up and be heard. That's right. I still believe that for the most part, America is a country of makers, not takers. Yes. When the takers outnumber the makers, we are truly doomed as a nation. When more people are looking for a handout than a leg up, free enterprise can no longer work. President John Kennedy in his inaugural speech said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." How soon, my fellow Americans, have we forgotten those inspiring words? Not bad for the CEO of a perpetually money-losing, government-regulated company. Now the government controls our largest banks. That should work well, don't you think? According to the Wall Street Journal, as reported on April the 4th, 2009, after coercing some banks to take TARP funds that didn't really need the assistance, they will now not allow them to pay back the unneeded money, thereby losing control over the banks. Power grab by the current administration under the guise of saving these companies is unconscionable. What's next? Nationalized oil companies, airlines, grain companies, farms. It's a scary trend. President Lincoln said as part of an address to the Wisconsin State Agricultural Society on September the 30th, 1859, no country can sustain in idleness more than a small percentage of its numbers. The great majority must labor at something productive. My friends, a welfare state cannot sustain itself. This is why socialism does not and cannot work. We must have more makers than takers. In closing, I would like to share one of my favorite quotes, often wrongly attributed to President Abraham Lincoln. However, the actual author was probably the Reverend William J.H. Betker, as it was quoted on a pamphlet that he published in 1916. Whoever the true author may be, no truer words were ever spoken. You cannot help the poor by destroying the rich. You cannot strengthen the weak by weakening the strong. You cannot bring about prosperity by discouraging thrift. You cannot lift the wage earner up by pulling the wage payer down. You cannot further the brotherhood of man by inciting class hatred. You cannot build character and courage by taking away men's initiative and independence. And you cannot help men permanently by doing for them what they could and should do for themselves.